Hello everyone, it's Tuppence again, and this is a World Music Day collaboration that's hosted by Loula of Nerd Goblin Art and Karen of the Dragon's Cave. This record was in a box of junk, and I think somebody must have been trying to make this into a clock because the labels are gone and it is scratched to glory. I don't have a record player, so I can't tell you what it is. I'm going to make a mould of it, but I need to make it thicker, so I've cut out some pieces of cardboard and I'm going to make a sandwich to make this thicker. I've marked the centre and then I'll be able to cut that hole later. So I want to stick this together. If I had some wood then I would have used that, but I didn't have any, so this is just going to be my workaround and I hope that it's going to work. I'm going to put some sticky tape all around the edge and along that centre. I just want to make sure that once I get this stuck down, it is completely stuck all the way around. I'm going to peel back the release paper and then I can lay this piece down and make sure that it overlaps, and I'll cut this off and I'll carry on going around until it's all covered. Then I can trim off any bits that are overhanging and I'll be able to stick these two pieces together. So I'm just going to put a square across the middle. Once I punch that hole through, it'll be fine. Now I can add my other pieces. I'll peel off the label. This is cardboard from a packet of photo paper. So I'm going to stick that down. I really should have had that shiny side up, and that might have eliminated one of the processes. Once I've got this peeled off, I'm going to try and snug this up as close as I can. I don't really want any gaps that the silicone might be able to pour into. So I'm going to press that down really well and make sure that that is stuck. Now I'm going to punch the hole in the middle, and this is the clock mechanism I'm going to use. I got this from Temu. So that's the size of the hole that I need. I found a drill which was about the same size, pretty much the same size, and I'm going to use that just by hand to poke a hole through the cardboard. Now I think the actual record I'm going to have to do the same with that because I think that is slightly smaller, so I will drill the hole in the record so that it matches. You can see as I'm doing that it was a little bit rough, so I'm neatening that up as much as I can. I've got a bit of dust and debris, so I'm using files to do that, and then I'm going to smooth it and seal it using some acrylic varnish. So I'll brush that inside the hole and try and seal that. This is corrugated cardboard, so it does have holes, and I want to eliminate as much possibility of the silicone getting in there. I'm going to coat the whole of this surface with the acrylic varnish, and if I'd used the shiny side I may not have had to do this. Now I'm going to apply my tape to the record, and again I've got it around the middle and all around the outsides, and then I can stick those pieces together. And that's the sandwich made, and I've plugged up these holes with some acrylic varnish. I don't want any of the silicone getting in there because I won't be able to take it out of the mould. So this is the side that's going to stick to the bottom of the mould, and I've put some tape around the middle. I've only got two pieces on the side at the moment. I'm going to peel back those release papers and then I can add two more pieces, and that hole is now completely surrounded. So I've stuck it to the base of a plant pot saucer, and I'm hoping that the material that that's made of will help me to release. I'm not using any releasing agent or anything like that. I'm pressing down on it to make sure that it sticks all the way round, and I'm going to give this surface a wipe, get rid of any finger marks, and then I can pour on the silicone. I'm using NicPro and I've mixed up 910 millilitres. This is going to give me a depth of about 1 centimetre, just enough to make sure that the mould is stable and it's not too flimsy, because it's going to be a pretty big mould. I left it for 8 hours and it's set, so now I need to try and get it out. I'm going to start trying to pull away from the edges and hope that this is actually coming away, and I can see that it is, so that's a good sign. Once I got enough of it freed from the edge, I used a little spatula tool to prise up some so that I could get my thumb underneath it. And that way I could lift it up and pull it out, because it's not only the silicone that's stuck, but the tape as well. Alright, let's flip it over and check out what happened. I can see that some of the silicone has flowed over the surface, but it doesn't look too bad. I'll be able to pull that away. It hasn't completely covered the surface, which is great. It does appear to be a little bit thicker on that side, so I'm thinking maybe some of the tape failed on that side. But it's easy enough. I'm just going to grab a pair of scissors and cut this away. I can neaten up the mould. I'm just going to take it off of this silicone mat because it's sticking to it. You can see how big this is. It doesn't even fit on my leveling table. So let me cut some of this excess off. I'll follow the scissors around the outside of the cardboard here so I know that I'm not cutting off too much. And I'll keep all of these scrap pieces because I can throw them into some other silicone that I'm making, and it'll help to bulk out the mould. It really was quite thick on this side, so I'm thinking that the tape released from the bottom of the tray, letting the silicone seep underneath it. Alright, let's see if I can get this out now. And it's coming away quite easily if I bend it. I've got a little area here where it might have seeped into the cardboard. It's not coming away quite so easily, but yeah, there's just a few little strands where it might have gone in, but that's okay. They've broken off, so I've managed to get that out, and I've got that little center point there. It's a little bit raggy. In fact, even the edges are raggy, and it will be because the side of the cardboard is not completely smooth. That's okay. I'm hoping that it will be hidden behind the clock. If it's not, and I really hate it, I'm just gonna have to sand the edges. But anyway, I need to leave this now to sit for a while and rest, but you can see that it's got enough detail, and then I'm going to be back once I can pour the resin. So I cleaned up the edges a little bit more, and I've also left this to cure. You need to leave it for at least 24 hours before you can start to use it. I'm going to decorate it with some Chameleon Flakes, which I got from Temu, and I've already mixed up my craft resin. As I said, these came from Temu, and they're meant really, I think, for your nails, but I can't get the Let's Resin Chameleon Flakes here, so I thought I'd try these. So I want to see if I had enough on my lid. I don't want to use too many of them, but I couldn't get them to drop off my lid. So I'm going to randomly put them in there, and there's no point me covering that center section because that's going to have a label on it. So I want to kind of put a patch here, like a ray coming out across the record, a shiny record. I put some of the flakes down, and then I use my brush to burnish them in, and they're quite, you know, the grooves are there, so they are sort of sticking in those grooves. It's also really staticky, and it flies off of your brush and goes into places that you don't want, so you just have to go with it. Okay, I think that's enough Chameleon Flakes. I've got my mould sitting on a glass cutting mat, which is on top of my leveling table because it was too big and it was hanging over the edge. And now I can pour my resin. I mixed up about 8 ounces, and it looks like that is just enough to give me a decent layer over the surface. I'm just going to use my stick to make sure that spreads all over the base. I did use these little leveling dots to make sure that this was completely level. Spread all that out, and that looks pretty good. It looks like it's all covered. So I'm going to leave this now for a little while and let it thicken up, and then I'll be back. This is thickened up now. It's been several hours, and this surface is really tacky, and I want to put these gorgeous hex glitters on there. I'm going to just sprinkle them on the surface, and at first they're going to look like they're just going to sit there, they're not going to stick, but they will sink very gradually into the resin, just enough to hold them, but they shouldn't sink all the way through to the bottom. So I'm scattering them across, and then I'm going to concentrate a little bit more along the path of those rays where I've got the chameleon flakes. So I want that to be slightly heavier. And these, as I say, should have a chance to stick. This resin should be fully hardened in about another 6 to 8 hours, I would say. So I'll come back in the morning and hopefully I can add another layer, and all these glitters will have sunk enough that they won't float up into the layer, because I'm going to be putting black on the surface. That seems to have worked. They have gone just below the surface. Some of them may still be floating around on the top. This is some JDiction 4-hour fast cure resin, and I've put some jet black pigment in there from Apex Resins. So I make sure that this is all mixed in. There's about 7 ounces in here. So this should give me a good layer, or a big enough layer to cover the back. Oh, that's so luscious. Let me scrape all of that out. And then I'm going to use my heat gun just to warm this up a little bit, because the resin is a lot thicker than the craft resin that I use. If it's a fast cure, it tends to be a thicker viscosity. So once I've got all this out, I'm going to heat this up, make sure it gets all the way and covers the whole surface. Then I'm going to give it a spritz of alcohol to pop the bubbles, and I'm going to leave it to cure. Instead of using numbers, I'm going to use musical notations and instruments. So I've got this mould, and I'm using the same jet black pigment, and this time I'm using craft resin because that is a little bit more runny, although this one's been sitting around for a little while. These are really tiny moulds. It's meant for fondant and icing and stuff, so the cavities are pretty small. I'm just blobbing it on. I don't really care if it goes over the surface. I'm just going to use my stick to guide it in place, and that should let it seep down. Anything that is on the surface I will try and clean up before it sets, otherwise I'm just going to cut it off. So this one isn't too bad, but the other mould I have are ridiculously small, and I don't know whether it's actually going to work or not, but we will see. And this is the mould in question. So again, I'm just pouring blobs on. I will use my stick to try and scrape it into the areas and remove anything over the surface afterwards. There's lots of interesting shapes here. I've got musical instruments. That clarinet next to that trumpet or trombone, even that little area is ridiculously small. They may not work. All it would take is one bubble to be in the wrong place, and that's not going to come out. But we'll see, and if they do, I think they're going to make interesting numbers. I really hope this saxophone works. It's time to demold these. These ones pop out pretty easy and they look okay. Yeah, I love the rounded edge on this. This is a very nice mould, very flexible. Now we try these ones. Just want to be careful of these little tiny bits and don't want to snap any off. Wow, that's so fine. I think that says band, and it's lots of musical instruments on the top. Now let's see my saxophone. Yeah, that worked. I'm going to finish demoulding these, and then I'm going to decorate them with some chrome markers to add some shine. I have a chrome marker silver from JDiction. I'm going to colour some of them silver and some of them in a gold. I want the numbers to stand out because at the moment my clock is going to be black, and so are my numbers, so I need to do something to make sure that they are visible. The nib of this pen is really chunky, so I've just put some onto the silicone mould, and I'm using a tiny brush to try and get some of that silver into all of these little textures on the numbers. These ones are not quite so bad. You just got to make sure that you get around all the outsides. So I'm going to carry on doing the rest and let them dry. Before I fit the clock mechanism, I've got this label that I have printed out. So I designed this and then cut it out using my Cricut. It's a white vinyl sticker paper, and I've got a piece of parchment, so I'm going to lay that down on the parchment with just the top part of it hanging off. And then I can try and line this up because I can see through the parchment. Oh, I've forgotten to take the center out. Let me just take that out. There we go. And now I can line it up so I can see where the hole is and line this up. It's a little bit difficult to see that hole, so I'm just trying to feel where it is, but I'm going to lift it up and see if the light shines through it, and then I can judge whether I've got that over the hole properly. I can stick down that top piece, and then I'll pull back my parchment paper and the sticker will lay down in place. There we go. So now I've got the label for my record. I can start fitting the clock mechanism in there. I did take this outside and sand around the edges using my Dremel, so it's not quite so sharp. The back isn't pretty, but that's okay. It's not going to be seen as it's going to be against the wall. This clock mechanism comes as a pack of 3. I got that from Temu. It takes one AA battery. So this is a rubber washer, and you've also got a hanger. Actually, I need to take that off. Put the hanger on first, the right way round, and that hangs over the back. And now you put the washer on. I'm going to pass this from the back through the hole. It fits perfectly. And then you need to screw the little nut on and tighten that. So you may need some pliers or a spanner. I'm just going to use my fingers to get it as tight as possible for now. Because I've got a label on it, I want to make sure that it is hanging straight. So I've made sure that the hanger on the back is upright, and I've tightened that nut. Now I'm going to attach the hands. They've got different size holes in the middle, so that determines the order you put them on. That's the biggest one. And then this next one has a slightly smaller hole and doesn't go down quite so far. And the last one has a little cap that fits on the top. These hands were red, but I coloured them in gold with a chrome marker. I'm just making sure that there is enough separation between them because they are pretty flimsy, and if they're bent and touch each other, then they're not going to turn around properly. So I'm just straightening that bottom one and making sure that it doesn't touch the others. And they're all pointing up to the 12, so that's where I need to put my first instrument or whatever I'm going to use as a number. I'm going to put some B7000 on the back of this treble clef, I think it's called, and I'll pop that in place at the bottom because that's going to be for number 6. I turned the hands on the clock until it got to 1 o'clock, and then I knew where to put my next one. And this is how I went on all the way round, gluing them. Now some I could glue with super glue because the backs were completely flat, and others I had to use the B7000 because there were slight dips. So I carried on applying all of the numbers around the clock in this same method, and then I had to wait to make sure that the B7000 glue had completely gone off. I put a battery in and I hung it up. I love it. I think it looks really good, and yes, it is scratched and there are marks, but actually you don't really notice that once it's hung up. And I really love that glitter effect. It looks almost like a bokeh effect that you get from light. I hope you've enjoyed this video. Give me a thumbs up, comment, share if you can, subscribe if you haven't. It costs nothing and it really helps my channel. Check my description box for the playlist to see what other people have made. Thanks so much for watching. Bye.